Welcome to On the Way to School, your 6-minute daily boost for educators and administrators. I'm Christopher S. Dennis, and today, let's elevate our journey together. Good morning, everybody. I hope you have, woke up on the right side of the bed this morning on the way to school. I'm excited to talk about today's topic, and it's one that a good portion of administrators and probably a good portion of teachers, especially in independent or tuition-based schools, don't necessarily have a chance to slow down and get some information on. So I'm going to try to help out and share things that were shared with me when it comes down to the budget. So I'm going to call this episode Help a Budget Out. There's so many things that go into running a school, and one of those is making sure that the funds are there, because those funds are resources for you to be able to do the great work that you do. And for schools that charge tuition, independent schools, the tuition doesn't always close the gap. So that's where the fundraising and the donors come in to cover the gap. But a good portion, probably I'll say 90% of the tuition in most places, actually covers the overall operating expenses of the school. So you need the students in the spaces, the families committed to the program to cover the tuition, and all of the additional resources that are leveraged to run a school. They all matter. They all matter. Okay. So if 90% of the tuition covers the overall budget of a school, 2/3 of the budget goes to salary. So you're running the school programs and all their auxiliary things on 1/3 of the budget. So it's really important to understand that, those dollars count. So when you're thinking about all the things you want to do, the things you can't do, when you want to hire a person, that additional employee or that FTE or headcount, as we call it, that chunk continues to stack up. Okay. So when someone has to tell you that they can't make that hire for you or add someone to your team or your staff, or we can't do additional programming, it's because we have to make sure that the overall operating budget of the school is in line so that the balance sheet isn't out of whack. Okay. So there's income and expenses that come into the school. So tuition, fundraiser dollars, all those things can be income, and the expenses are the salaries, the things that you have to pay out. So you want to make sure that you have a predictable and kind of stable, quote unquote, budget, so that way you can prepare and anticipate what's going on. You can't have these sweeping changes to what you're spending year after year, or adding programs that substantially grow the cost of the program, because then you're going to need to make sure you have something to offset that cost by way of income through the budget. So if you're an administrator, especially if you're a senior administrator, you should be talking to the finance manager or the CFO in your building, just to make sure that you understand what are the priorities, how are we doing, how close are we to our margins, so that way you can be affirmed in why you need to hold the line sometimes, and let folks know, like, hey, we can't do this, can't do that. Because if you only take the bleeding heart approach or the empathetic approach to, well, we got to spend this, we got to do that, you can't scale that times 7 people feeling the same way, saying the same thing, because then your school is going to be in a tough spot when there's something that comes up and you have to be in good shape. My boss tells me, through the pandemic, good schools did well. Good schools kept going, but schools that were already struggling, the pandemic essentially exposed some of the stressors there, because they didn't always have the cushion or the space to leverage and do what they needed to do to stay operating from a financial standpoint. So you help a budget out. Okay. If you're a manager and you haven't spent time reaching out to try to just connect with the budget manager or whoever approves the budgets that you're working with, you should probably spend some time and sit with them and find out, what's the snapshot of our budget outlook? What do I need to tighten up? And you should be willing as a manager and as a leader to think about, where can I tighten the reins without having to be asked, so that way we can do more as a school. Okay. If there are 7 different departments and 7 different, essential groups in your school, what does it look like if each group were to think about what's the one thing I can do away with this year to put us in a better position years down the road? And faculty salaries should be one of those things that you're always trying to figure out how to make sure you get the faculty as much as you can get them every year. And schools do a great job of doing their absolute best to do this, but all of the other permanent things that we add impact the ability to do that. And, of course, one pizza party or one Starbucks run for the office is not going to take us out. But, some things that I've asked my folks to think about is, do we have to have, scaled events with 4 different meal options versus one? What can we do to make sure that we're maximizing the purpose of these interactions and these gatherings to actually meet our mission, but also be responsible? Because both of those things are required. You don't meet the mission without being responsible over resources. And those resources are human capital, financial resources, etc. So again, schedule a time to meet with your CFO, get a rundown of your school's financial situation, and be prepared to also explain why you're reaching out to get that information. Every CFO is not going to have the time, and they may not just want to hang out and just tell you everything, because they're going to say, well, okay, I don't really know why you want to know that. So don't skip steps in that process. Reach out to your direct manager, because they could probably give you the same information. But if you're a mid-level, senior level leader, you probably do want to reach out so you can understand, because, like I've said in a couple other episodes, if you can anticipate how you can be a resource and support the overall mission of the school, you can actually kind of unclog some bottlenecks that may exist. Okay. So help a budget out. Also, don't be a drain on the resources. Okay. If you've had a couple good runs and your projects have been greenlit and things are going well, you probably need to think about, is this a season where let me try to be resourceful in a different way, maybe combine something or revive something else versus add growth, because it has to be predictable and stable to be able to be sustained. So again, hopefully that helps you think about something different today on the way to school. Take care. Thanks for joining me on the way to school. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep making a difference. I'm Christopher S. Dennis. See you tomorrow.